Good evening, student. I am starting financial management in the first chapter, the fund flow statement. Now, what is fund flow statement? It is a statement showing the fund flow from starting from a particular date up to a certain date. Now, generally, in the examinations, you are given the balance sheet of 2 consecutive years. In the balance sheet, we find out the capital structure, we find out the non-current liabilities, current liabilities, and thereafter other provisions, short term and long term, and then we find out the asset side, non-current asset, as well as the current asset under the current scenario. Now, here in the fund flow statement, we are to show how the fund that came into the enterprise during that 2 particular dates. You are given the balance sheet. Say balance sheet you are given on the 31st March 2019 and 31st March 2020. Now, between 2019 end and up to the end of 2020, 31st March end, how the fund which has come into the enterprise and how the fund has been utilized by the enterprise. Now, fund flow statements you have to prepare, whether you are appearing degree course, whether you are appearing CMA, or whether you are writing for the exam CA examinations or for any other professional examinations. You have to first look into the working capital portions. Now, this is I have started already the financial management. Now, in financial management, we show the financial positions of the company, decision making by the companies or enterprise, as well as we interpret different result. Now, here in the fund flow statement, first I will consider the working capital. Now, what is working capital? Working capital, by working capital we means the how much your current asset in total exceeded your current liability, and how this has whether provided fund during those 2 particular dates, or you have put or your enterprise has exhausted fund between those 2 days. Now, by working capital we understand total of current asset by total minus total of current liability. Now, let us see what are the current asset. Current asset means circulating asset, the asset which are changing in values from date to dates. Like if you consider the closing stock on 31st March 2019 and 31st March 2020, now if this has reduced, that means you have to understand the reduction in the value has provided you fund. Reduction in the value has provided you fund. Now, let us see. Now, closing stock will split further into raw material, WIP, as well as the finished good. Now, raw material decreased. That means that much raw material you have put into your productions during these 2 particular dates, and those productions has went into your closing stock, and then closing stock again reduced means that those closing stock has been utilized by you to make a sell, and sell means if it is on credit basis then it form a debtor, and debtor again reduced means you receive the fund. So reduction in closing stock provided you fund. Similarly, reduction in WIP, reduction in the raw material also provided you fund. Reduction in the current asset provided you fund. Similarly, bill receivable, data, prepaid expenditure, anything which reduced provided you fund. I am speaking about the fund flow statement between two dates, two balance sheet date. Balance sheet I am considering here 31st March 2019 and 31st March 2020. Closing stock reduce provided you fund. Closing stock reduce in raw material provided you fund. Closing stock reduce in WIP, work in progress, provided you fund. Similarly, closing stock of debtors provided you fund. Bill receivable reduce provided you fund. Here I will consider the cash at bank as well as cash in hand. Reduce provided you fund, opportunity to utilize those funds. Now current asset minus current liability is working capital. Suppose I keep the current asset constant. Current liability increased. That means you have not paid. If current asset on the initial date remains same, for example, and current asset on the last date increased, that means those current liabilities those appearing on the first date, the very next date on the 31st March 2019. That means 1st April 2019 current liability remaining same, and after that many current liability like creditor increase, bill payable increase, short term loan or borrowing increase provided you fund. So increase in current liability and decrease in current asset provided you fund. Now that fund you have utilized obviously somewhere else. Similarly, instead of decrease in the working capital, that means decrease in current asset as well as increasing in current asset, decreasing and increasing current liability provided you fund. Increasing in current asset, you have put money into that, that is you have utilized fund, as well as decreasing current liability means you have met your liability, you absorb the fund. So first we will prepare in the fund flow statement changes of working capital between two dates. Now if there is a reduction in the working capital, means provided you fund. If there is an increase or enlargement in the working capital, is your utilize of fund. I will come up with different other sources of fund for a company, like for example issue of equity, issue of preference shares, or loan raised, long term borrowing, short term borrowing. Later on, here today we have understood decrease in the working capital provided you fund, that is sources of fund, and increase in working capital between two dates, it is an absorption of fund. So while preparing the fund flow statement, we have to first find out whether between those two dates there is a decrease in working capital or increase in working capital. Decrease in working capital means it is sources of fund. Increasing working capital means it is absorption of fund. And between those two dates, total sources of fund must have been utilized exactly of the same amount. Utilization of fund. Thank you very much. I'll go more details to show how the fund flow statement is to be prepared. Day after tomorrow, I'm coming with the practical problems. These are very suitable for the CA, CMA, CS and other professional examinations, as well as they are suitable for the degree course student of all Indian university as well as from the outside. Thank you very much. Good night.